Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Stephen Dennis, the president of the Nanaimo Arts Council, joining MC Kelsey McLean Urquhart for this event. We begin the ceremony by acknowledging with gratitude and respect that we gather on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, specifically the lands of the Sunamo First Nation. I also wish to thank our co-sponsors, Vancouver Island Regional Library, represented by librarians Julie Carter and Chris Ward, and Vancouver Island University, represented by Professor Joy Googler. And government funders of NAC and the Island's Short Fiction Review, the City of Nanaimo, and the Province of British Columbia. My pleasure now to introduce our MC and Program Coordinator of the Island Short Fiction Review, Kelsey McLean Urquhart. Kelsey recently graduated from VIU with a bachelor's degree in creative writing and English. Kelsey is a valuable member of NEC's program team. Her volunteer management efforts include the Island Short Fiction Review, Nanaimo Art Walk, and the development of NAC governance policies, including drafting the Nanaimo Arts Council's cultural safety policy. Thank you, Kelsey. Welcome, and it's over to you.
Hi, everybody. It's lovely to see everybody here today. I will now proceed to introduce the judges who were able to read all of the stories that were submitted. Our first judge, who sadly could not be here, was Vancouver Island Regional Library's Julie Carter. However, she will be joining us with a pre-recorded video later in the program. Our youth judge is also Vancouver Island Regional Library's Chris Ward. That category involved ages 13 to 18 who submitted to that category, and the junior category was about 12 and under. And then we had our adult judge, Sam, who I will allow Joy to introduce.
Yes, thank you, Kelsey. My name is Joy Googler. I'm the publisher of Portal Magazine and a professor in the CREW department, the creative writing department at VIU. And it was my pleasure to select Sam Shelstad as the judge for the adult category. He's the author of 2 novels, the upcoming The Cobra and the Key this fall, and then the novel The Citizens of Light, which both of those books are published by Touchwood Editions and Brindle and Glass. He's also the author of a story collection, Cop House, published by Nightwood, and he's a regular contributor to McSweeney's Internet Tendency. His work has appeared in many literary magazines, including the New Quarterly and Joyland, and he was longlisted for the CBC Short Story Prize, a runner-up for the Thomas Morton Memorial Prize, and a finalist for a National Magazine Award. He lives in Toronto, but is joining us by Zoom today. And if you'd like more information about his writing and other endeavors, you can go to samshelstad.com. It's a pleasure to have him here. I'll turn it back to you, Kelsey.
Alrighty, and we will be kicking off the program with our junior category. Julie is going to introduce each story and each author, and they will then proceed to read a 3-minute excerpt from their wonderful stories. Give me one moment to get us ready. And then, sorry. Over here, and then here we go.
Hello everyone, my name is Julie. I'm a librarian at the Nanaimo North branch of Vancouver Island Regional Library, and I was the judge for the junior category this year. The junior category is for writers ages 12 years and under, and I read every story that was submitted for the junior category, and I loved each and every one of them. So thank you to everyone who did submit a story, and I really hope you'll all submit stories again next year. So in 3rd place this year, we have Ollie Scarlett's Ross with A Tale Through Time. And A Tale Through Time is about a time-traveling mouse. A time-traveling mouse who has a very unique method of instigating traveling through time, a method that they have very little control over. And I'm not going to spoil the story by telling you anything about that method right now. I did love the time travel aspect of this story. I also loved how imaginative this story was, both in the big details, but also in the little details, like the fact that the mouse had an unusual pet, an unusual teeny tiny pet. There were also unexpected twists that surprised me. And going back to the time travel aspect, I loved how time travel was described. It made my brain hurt in a good way, kind of pondering the logistics of time travel. And I think that was the author's intention for sure. So congratulations to Ollie.
Alrighty. And with that, Ali, if you would like to begin, the floor is yours.
So do I just start? Achoo! Not again, I say as a swirl of lights comes around me. Here we go again, I say as I travel back in time. Excuse me, I should probably start at the beginning, but after I get back into the present. Right now I'm going into the past. I don't know when and I don't know where, but I'll see you when I get back into the present. Well, this is the furthest back I've ever traveled. Is that a Triceratops? And a T-Rex? Wow, it looks like I'm going to be here for a while until I sneeze. Maybe there's some pepper around? What else can make me sneeze? Oh, maybe a feather. I'll look around and see if I can find one. Here we go, I found a feather. Tickle, tickle, tickle my nose. Achoo! Ah, there we go, I'm back in the present. Now let's start from the beginning, and I mean the very beginning. It all started the day I was born. I'm a mouse. My name is Mika, but I always go by Mona. I was born February 22nd at exactly 2:22 in the afternoon. I'm considered a lucky mouse because those are all twos. I was born in 2022. It's 2023 now. My parents died a few months ago in a big thunderstorm. It was my fault. At least I think so. My parents were famous, and that meant so was I. We are the Acorns. Melissa Acorn, my mom, Flash Acorn, my dad, and me, Mona Acorn. My parents named me Mika because they thought the name was cute. But after they died in the storm, I go by Mona, and now I always will. Right now, I'm looking for a job. I've been through 15 interviews. 14 out of 15, I sneezed my way into the past. And on the 15th, I wrote my name backwards. I wasn't meant to be a lawyer anyway. I want to be an artist. I think I'm going to go for that next, or a designer. My mom was a famous singer, and my dad was a famous police mouse. Even though I have famous parents, I'm not famous for anything. I'm sad that I don't have my parents anymore, but sometimes I feel a little bit glad that they don't see me fail at every job interview.
Wow. Yeah, if you want to
Wonderful.
unmute your thing and let's give Ali, lovely Ali. Well done, well done.
Well, thank you so much for that, Ali. We will now move on to our second place winner, who this time will go just like this.
Okay.
Wait, where did it go?
And then in second place in the junior category this year, we have Mira Vickers with the story Your Guide to Monsters. Now, Mira was one of our winners last year. So Mira is a very talented writer, and I was glad to see that Mira was a part of this again this year. This year's story captured my attention from the very first line as the narrator spoke directly to the adults reading the story. The story goes on to describe 3 different kinds of monsters who live in everyone's houses. All the monsters were so well described that they actually totally sprung to life in my mind. I could completely picture them and hear them and smell them. I really did finish this story truly believing that these monsters could exist. Even the explanations for how they are created made complete sense. A brilliant story indeed. Congratulations, Mira.
And okay. And now, if Mira, if you are ready,
I'm
you may
ready.
begin. Awesome.
Your Guide to Monsters by Mira Vickers. You, my friend, have creatures in your room. Now, don't go on this rant about how you think you're crazy, or it's in your head, or you kids have wild imaginations. They are there, and they're watching. I've never been able to tell what their plans are, why they sit in our rooms, houses, and apartments trying to scare us. Don't ask me. And certainly do not shoot the messenger. It's not like I created these things. Some of them are embarrassed of what they look like. Some don't want to scare us. Others take advantage of their horrifying looks. They get a kick out of seeing us squirm into the corners of our beds. Their only purpose? To cause goosebumps. At least that's what they want to believe. I'm here to explain everything. Why they exist, how they exist, who they are, and what they are at heart. I'm your trusty guide through this mental madness and breach of sanity that we call monsters. I wish to start with what monsters are and how they exist. When enough scared kids and adults imagine something or hallucinate something, it becomes real. That doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Well, why can't I just imagine having $1 million? People would imagine that enough to make it happen, right? That's not how it works. After you've watched a scary movie, you might have a tough time falling asleep, right? Scary thoughts are extremely strong, much stronger than normal thoughts. If you face the wall, you swear something's behind you, staring. If you close your eyes, you swear something scuttles over your nose when it's just hair. That pile of clothes in the corner looks a lot like a person laying on the ground. Things are different when you show a kid a scary movie. Kids do have better imaginations and whimsical thoughts. That is true, but kids are also incredibly naive. The main reason these things exist, kids' thoughts are powerful. You show a kid a scary movie, that will be ingrained with them for the rest of their lives. Their mental border of fiction and reality is incredibly slim. If you tell a kid, Johnny Chainsaw is coming to get you, they will believe it. Eventually, with that thought still in their little minds, the barrier between fiction and reality breaks, and these creatures flood into the reality section. The thoughts got too strong. It pretty much goes from, what if the sky was purple, to, oh my god, the sky is purple! Those blurs you could have sworn were hands are real now and reaching for your legs. These monsters are basically poltergeists. You can see them and feel them in the hours of the night.
Wonderful, absolutely wonderful, Mira. And the rest of the story is just fantastic. Okay.
That was awesome, Mira, and thank you for missing violin for us.
Yes, thank you. And now we will go to our first place winner. I will let Uli take it away.
And finally, in first place this year, we have Sapphire Riversgate with the story Dive Deeper. Dive Deeper centers around two sisters at the beach on a stormy day. This story wowed me in its ability to blend reality with fantasy, and in the way it left the reader wondering at the end what exactly was reality and what exactly was fantasy. It doesn't really come to a decisive conclusion, and I love that. Just kind of leaves the reader to make their own conclusions. I was also deeply impressed by the use of imagery. I felt like the setting and the scenes just came to life before my eyes, down to being able to feel the wind whistling past me and feeling the need to yell so that other people could hear me. It really was an atmospheric story, and I raced to the end to see if it was going to end happily or not. It was a superb story, Sapphire. Congratulations to you.
The water was wild and freezing. All I saw was darkness and bubbles. I was already feeling so out of breath, I needed to swim to the surface. Propel myself forward, but a small hand gripped my arm violently. Billy, I gurgled. The hand fell away. Billy! Could hardly hear my choked voice in the thick water, and so I doubted Billy even knew it was me she'd held. Terrified, I let out a bit of my breath to sink more and find Billy, but all I saw was the dark, swirling water. I stared upwards, suddenly feeling like I was drowning. I tried to swim, but crashing waves held me down. No, 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 no. Suddenly, the water cleared. What appeared to be a tail glittered in the sunlight above the ocean. Wait, sunlight above? But it's dark and stormy. Long, thick hair twirled and swirled in the water. The tail was swiftly stroking through the water, and whatever it was clinging tightly to something else. Something smaller. Then they disappeared toward the surface. I felt weak, almost limp, in the cold, airless abyss. But in a way, I felt at peace. No, no, no! I remembered Billy grabbing my arm, then sinking away. I had to live for her. I couldn't abandon my frightened little sister now. I tried to swim up, but barely made it an inch. Please, I whispered to the water, feeling my life slip away from my grasp like the water I was in. Please! A cool yet full of life hand gripped my hand tightly. I looked up and saw the waving hair glistening in the sunlight. Sunlight! A silky, smooth body that shimmered in the water pushed upward, and I caught a glimpse of a shining tail. Before I knew it, I was lying on the rocky beach, coughing up salty water. The sun was warm, and beside me lay this little girl, my sister. Billy, I burst out, hugging her shivering body tightly. Billy, you're okay. The storm seemed to have ceased before its peak. I noted this, examining the sky. Casey, I'm so sorry, Billy cried. I took in a big breath of fresh air. We should go home. Dad came home to his soaking daughters and immediately asked what had happened. I told him about how Billy raced away, fell into the ocean, and how I dove in after. So it was a corn that saved you, Dad gasped when I finished telling my story. Before I could respond, Billy shook her head. Casey saved me, she gushed, respect and gratitude and lightning in her quivering voice. I paused. No, I didn't, I said, after a long moment of silence. I was drowning myself. Billy furrowed her eyebrows. But I thought you'd take me to shore. Memories flooded back into my head. That wasn't me, I whispered. I was also saved. Dad looked terribly confused. Okay, how did you guys swim to shore, he asked. Billy and I exchanged glances. She had lovely hair, Billy murmured, and a sparkling tail, I whispered. Dad hesitated. Are you guys telling me you almost died, but a mermaid rescued you?
Chris, if you would like to begin introducing our youth authors.
Yes, I'd love to. So hi, everybody. My name's Chris. I am the librarian at the Parksville Library. And I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm gathered on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, including the territories of the Snanawas and Qualicum people. And it was such an honor to read everyone's stories. I was so grateful for the opportunity. And it was a tough decision for me to make. I spent quite a bit of time going through the stories and making the decision. So I'll start with third place. Gabriel Fry's On the Right Track was a great story. This story did so much of the work of writing so well. It constructed a world that felt detailed and true and real, characters whose motivations were complex and clear, and whose message, though embedded in its time, feels timeless and important. The author's ability to research and construct a world full of believable characters will carry her very far, as these are some of the essential tools of storytelling. So from beginning to end, it was a great story. And again, it's Gabriel Fry's On the Right Track for third place. And I just got the name, so I hope I got that name right.
Alrighty. Well, with that, Gabriel, if you would like to begin.
Okay. I'm Gabrielle, I'm 15 years old, and this is my story. 10-year-old Margaret woke up at the sound of her father humming in the kitchen. She rushed down the wood-paneled stairs. Do you have it? Margaret asked out of breath. Her father motioned for her to sit beside him. She propped herself on the chair as her father, Mr. Fisher, opened the daily newspaper. Her father smiled gleefully as she reworded the articles, making them much better than they were originally. He lifted her up under her arms and swung her around in circles around the kitchen. What an amazing daughter I have, he repeated. Her interest in writing blossomed, and it was because of his constant encouragement Margaret finished school and moved to Washington in 1948 at the age of 18 to fulfill her lifelong dream. Hello, a deep voice murmured. Margaret shook her head. Sorry, I was distracted. 5 coffees and bologna sandwiches, please, Margaret said, placing the little change she had beside the register. There was nothing her boss, Mr. Martin, liked more than a bologna sandwich and a cup of tar-colored coffee. Margaret carefully placed the tray on the palm of her hand and firmly gripped the bag of sandwiches with her teeth. A few dirty looks from strangers is better than being late, she thought, rushing out of the coffee house. Her fast-paced walk began to turn into a steady jog. She looked in awe at the large building towering over her with the name Washington Post printed on the front in bold black letters. Always the same reaction, no matter how many times she'd seen it. While trying to balance the tray, she firmly pushed the large door open. Minutes later, Margaret burst into the war room unannounced. She looked at her boss apologetically, handing out the tray of coffee and sandwiches. Mr. Martin closed his jaw on a bologna sandwich, mayo oozing out of the corners of his mouth. She studied the short, pot-bellied man as he took a swig of the black coffee. Her skin crawled at the sight of Mr. Martin's caterpillar-like eyebrows, rising with every bite. Margaret pulled the article from her purse and placed it in front of Mr. Martin. Who's admitted this? He mumbled. Margaret cleared her throat, rolling her shoulders back. I did, Mr. Martin. The once loud and boisterous room was now silent. Men exchanged smirks while others shook their heads in disbelief. All at once, the room erupted into laughter. Mr. Martin tossed the article to the side as his male colleagues chuckled in the background. The corners of his mouth rose, displaying a set of crooked teeth. Very funny, he said. Mr. Martin, if you read it, I'm sure you would. How about you run along, he said, pinching her bum. Margaret flinched. Her stomach churned and twisted into several knots. Drops of warm liquid began to form on the surface of her forehead. She picked up the scattered papers one by one and stuffed them into her purse. Her hands closed into tight fists. Like every morning working as a secretary at the Washington Post, Margaret made phone calls, filled out boring paperwork, and received a few odd looks from her female colleagues. Then, at last, she went home, her safe place. Margaret put on her favorite pair of blue pajamas and let her hair down. Ouch, she said, rubbing her scalp. She opened the window to reveal a beautiful sunset. Blue, pink, and purple colors filled the sky, giving it a fairy tale-like essence. As a child, Margaret's mother would tell her that fairies would paint the clouds in a array of colors as a gift to the children. The corners of Margaret's mouth lifted. She stood over her thick oak desk and stared at the typewriter in front of her. They would accept my article if I were a man, she said, banging her fist on the table. She pulled the papers from her purse and laid them out onto the table, her gaze coming to rest on her name. She moved her fingers onto the keys and started to retype a copy of the first page with one small adjustment to the author's name, Mr. Hemingworth.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, that was wonderful. Alrighty, Chris, if you'd like to introduce our second place.
Yes, I would. So second place was the story You, Death, and I by Paul Wu. It was a pleasure to read this story. It was ambitious and risk-taking and unpredictable. I was so impressed at how it approached such familiar archetypes and questions, but found ways to subvert our expectations, flip characters' roles around, and generate productive, enjoyable confusion. I appreciate a story like this one that concerns itself with big questions while still managing to feel immediate and preserve a sense of playful humor. So congratulations to Paul, and thank you for sharing your story, You, Death, and I with us.
Thank you for your kind words. So, You, Death, and I by Paul Wu. The shimmering fractal patterns at the bottom of their mug of whiskey reminded them of something interesting that was about to happen. Death shrugged and continued watching the soot and rain dance across the crystal glass of the abandoned opera house. It reminded them of their long, long past. They missed the sound that their childhood willow tree would make in the wind before a tornado, and the warring power of it, along with the mysteries it could hold. There were no more mysteries now. Death had killed them all. Death held no secrets. It was a testament to technology and the ever-flexible laws of the universe that they could even remember such feelings and memories, ancient as they were. The embodiment of the world's unending war against entropy and suffering got up and played something on the grand piano. It was a song that was happy because it was sad. It was laughing in the face of catastrophic failure, an overpowering cacophony of doom that made you feel more alive than you've ever felt, more you. You've smiled at something going so perfectly and perfectly that every part of the plan goes up in flames. Haven't you? Maybe you've just never lived yet. You went up to Deaf and tapped him on the shoulder. Quite rude of an action, I say, to one of such high political stature, for Deaf is always the elected leader of any group larger than two, and sometimes as small as one. Have I ever lived? You asked cautiously. Of course not. Why would you have? They turned around and finished the golden brown liquid sloshing in their mug. Well, I feel alive right now, if that counts at all. And that moment just passed. It just died. Death clapped her hands, and you wondered how many infinite swaths of creation had died through that very action. Wouldn't I at least have lived for one ever-changing moment? Sure. So what happens then when you actually die?
Awesome, Paul. Congratulations.
Wonderful and incredible. Thank you so much, Paul, for submitting. And now, Chris, I believe it is time to introduce the first place winner.
It is time to do that. But before I do that, I just want to say one more time, bravo to all of these stories in every category. In the category that I had the privilege of reading, they all carried such unique promise. It was a privilege to spend time with such mature, assured voices, and to see that in young writers is so inspiring. They were three incredibly different stories, and they are all singular in their distinct talent. So again, it's just such a pleasure. So first place was Natalie Hutchinson's Do Elephants Believe in Heaven? This was such an impressive story in so many ways. A confident, mature, and unique voice with so many beautiful moments in the prose, a compelling, unusual structure, and a lovely sense of momentum and mystery. It preserves what it wants to keep hidden confidently without leaving us feeling like we're missing anything. It feels like a meditation, a parable, and avoids easy resolution or cliche. It brings us into its world and leaves us feeling transformed, as great art does. And so I feel that way again about all these stories, that this kind of art can transform us. And so congratulations, Natalie, for Do Elephants Believe in Heaven?
Yeah, so I will be reading her piece out. Unfortunately, Natalie is not available today, but fortunately, and quite mysteriously, I am very good friends with her. We've known each other for the past 6 years, and she's always been a ray of sunshine and a great inspiration to me in the way I write. So once again, Do Elephants Believe in Heaven by Natalie Hutchinson. Come with me, dear, they said to me with a subtle glint of magic in their eyes. Or maybe it was the weight of the humid, stifling air of a long day upon their eyelids. They held my hand gently by the wrist and navigated by the messages that the leaves brought them. The ground was permeated with roots that craved a love that only the sky would provide. What are you trying to show me? I asked a half hour after they had led me off the beaten path. It was a place where an experienced wanderer could seem to be nearly omniscient. I would not doubt if they claimed that they had felt a flutter in the rhythm of the pastoran's song a long ways away. I wondered what they had found so interesting as to be incapable of communicating through words, but instead by their cryptic swirling motions of the hand, beckoning spirits with offers that I could not decipher. There's beauty objective in these lands. There were a few shy verses, and as dreamy as that might be, and it was oh so very often endearing, most of what they said was an incomprehensible mumble to the gods. Perhaps it was their mantra in a foreign world of words, a language that was too sharp and too fluid, verbose in a fashion that made the head spin and the heart fall to melancholy. To speak is not always a necessity, and some would rather go without. They communicated in the shape of their smile, the small movements of their brass brown eyes, and the spells they cast a tug at the strings of your soul. I felt that in their austere mind flowed the proper harmonies with which the land would resonate. It made them a terrible conversationalist. A conversation goes both ways, my lovely raucous blackbird. 1,000 butterfly flutters away, I could see a clearing atop the small mountain and a light that streamed through at the edges of the canopy. As if impatient to show their radiance, I pointed to it, and they, an ever-strong embodiment of stoicism, could only continue their solemn march forward, not any faster, but with an increased determination in their step. that seemed to agree with my conclusion. We arrived shortly. We stood and gazed for so long. It was a beautiful view. I'll give them that.
Thank you, Paul. Well read.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Paul. And thank you, Natalie, for submitting such a wonderful story. And now we will be introducing the adult stories for the Island Short Fiction Review. Sam, if you would like to introduce each story, what was yours?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, first off, thanks so much for having me. Absolute pleasure. I read all 10 stories with pleasure, and it was just fun to see what people are doing and what different people are working on and coming up with. All the stories I read were so different, and it was, nerve-wracking making the decision, but it was a fun process to go through and just read these works. I'm very privileged to be chosen for this. I don't know who wrote these. I assume one of the people in this Zoom meeting that hasn't spoken or read yet. So I'll be excited to see who speaks up when I go through it. So I wrote just a little paragraph about each one. So I'm just going to read that. So we'll start with the third place story, which is The False Promise of Tidy. So The False Promise of Tidy examines the claustrophobic life of a filmmaker struggling to get through the early days of the pandemic. The film they just finished shooting before entering quarantine is about the world getting trapped in a time loop, a fitting metaphor for the state people found themselves in during lockdown, trying to hang on to their sanity at home as the days began to bleed together. As the protagonists and their partners searches for canning jars on Reddit, attend awkward Zoom cocktail meetups, and practice Polish, these mundane, routine tasks paint a familiar portrait of people cobbling together a makeshift buttress against the confusion and anxiety prevalent during this period. Darkly comic details like the airport baggage handler counting passenger sneezes, or the man collecting bird carcasses in order to pinpoint why humans are causing a large number of avian deaths, help give the seemingly cheery story an undercurrent of unease and anxiety. It was a great, funny, interesting story, well written, and I'm excited to see who wrote it and hear an excerpt.
That would be me.
Yes. Yes, The False Promise of Tidy was written by Kara.
Kara, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, hi. The False Promise of Tidy. I was working on a movie about a girl who wished that her sick mother not die. The wish was so strong that time stopped. The temporal anomaly kept mom alive, but trapped everyone else in a time loop. The pandemic hit, and the movie's production was shut down. After living the new pandemic reality for months, I went back to Los Angeles to finish the one scene we hadn't managed to complete before the shutdown, mom finally dying. Once the scene was completed, the streaming platform had their product, and I was released to fly back home. Landing in Vancouver, the Canada Border Services officer explained my responsibilities as outlined in the Quarantine Act. 14 days, no travel outside the home unless it was for a medical appointment, maintain distance with anyone I lived with. There was an ArriveCan app. The officer said, "We can track." It was possible that there'd be random phone calls to check up on me. I asked for details about how all this worked, and the officer repeated, "We can track." Although there were only a few of us at baggage claim, a traveler still managed to knock his cart into the back of my legs. The ceiling in the space was low, there were no windows, I saw only 2 vents. Television, newspapers, internet had been teaching us about viral vectors. Stale air was one. I wrote off the annoying knock of the cart into my legs as something to do with this traveler's contagion anxiety. The carousel light stopped flashing and the belt stopped moving. A baggage handler was clearing 6 unclaimed, expensive-looking molded plastic cases. "The bags are all off," he said, pointing to the lost luggage desk where 4 large men crowded the space. Someone in this group sneezed loudly. 197, the baggage handler said. "What?" Sorry, it's easier for me to remember if I say it out loud. It's been so empty here that I just started talking to myself. I didn't understand, but I smiled politely. Of course, he couldn't see it behind my mask. I've been keeping track of sneezes and baggage claims since the beginning of the shutdown. I'm up to 197, the baggage handler explained. How many of them covered up? I put my hand in front of my masked mouth and nose like we used to when we sneezed uncovered. 23. In the past months on television or YouTube, there had been animations of germs aerosolizing. When we exhaled, coughed, or sneezed, we were all inextricably joined in a cloudy bubble. Was that connection gone? Were we now each carrying our individuated haze behind masks? While shooting in Los Angeles, there had been points in the day when the crew was allowed to leave the stage for mask breaks outside. This moment to feel air on the face was, we had learned, an urgent need. Do you ever think about what's released when we lower our masks? I asked. All the time. Anna.
Thank you, Carla. Lovely.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Okay, that was great to hear. We'll move on to the second place winner. Again, I don't know who this is, but the story is Love and Belonging, which is a gritty and heartbreaking story of a jaded probation officer who doesn't remember when she lost all compassion for the people suffering from drug dependence that she sees every day. Her judgmental assessment of a female client encountered at the beginning of the story, as well as some harsh opinions regarding people living on the street in general, create an unsympathetic portrait. But then we follow our protagonist home. She's also dependent on drugs. Her relationships are a mess, and it's the finely tuned details of this life away from her desk which paint a vivid picture of the character's tainted worldview. The slugs of boxed wine, the dried up sauce on her pothead boyfriend's plate, and even the boots left tilted in the hallway. Every detail is put to use to create a tableau of decay, desperation, which perfectly mirrors the condemnatory voice the narrator used to describe her clients in the first half of the story. The two halves come together to create a powerful meditation on addiction and how one's severest judgments are often reserved for the people whose struggles most painfully reflect our own. Just love this story, very gritty, emotional, and I'm excited to see who wrote it.
And that was written by Amy Matisse.
It's Mattis, but
Mattis. I apologize about that.
That's okay, Kelsey. Thank you. I guess just as a content warning, as Sam mentioned, there's some strong language in drug use, but I will start from the beginning. And Love and Belonging. She tells me the addiction was her ex-boyfriend's fault. She was a care aide and had her life together until she went through a string of abusive relationships. This one used her as a mule to transport drugs. She was less likely to be searched, could lie better, flirt with police, undo a button. When they got pulled over, he said, "Don't say a word, you stupid bitch." But there were scales and baggies in the trunk, so the unmarked bottle of blue-green pills in her cleavage didn't matter. Nor did the shards of meth in the console. They only brought those so she could drive all night. The charge was up from simple possession to trafficking, a Supreme Court offense with a mandatory minimum. Can't talk your way out of that, even as the accomplice, especially today with all the fent out there killing all the young people. Someone's got to take the fall, appease the media. She did her time, and now she reports to me on probation. By the time female offenders get here, they're high risk. They fly under the radar because the courts take pity and they don't get sentenced as often or as harshly. Once they're on probation, though, they're long gone. Professional criminals sabotaging my cognitive behavioral interview attempts by blocking any real talk with their tears and all their belongings, their actual baggage strewn out upon my desk. Caitlin is a hot mess today. She shows me a lucky troll doll she keeps with her, a pink jewel in its belly button, felt pen scribbled across its torso from the kid who's never been in her care. Pieces of Caitlin's wayward hair extensions stick out the sides of her head, and her fake eyelashes are half falling off like spiders crawling down her face. She asks to use the bathroom as a shower. In there for 20, interview over in 10. It's a defense mechanism I've come to know, delaying the conversation by crying and unpacking. I mean, why confront anything when survival is at stake? I try to teach her Maslow's hierarchy of needs: food, shelter, connection. Hard to believe she was ever a fully functioning member of society. Her face is caked with the wrong foundation. Flaky scabs bump through her cheeks like a dirt road. Her drug deals are fueling the opiate crisis, and there's no help for her now. She's nodding off on my desk. I sanitize my pens while she starts snoring, eyelids fluttering, twitching at intervals. I lean back in my chair and take in her bag lady mess, the puffball baby blue keychain with the keys that open no doors. She wants to get back into treatment. I don't know when I lost my compassion for these people. I guess when they started taking over the streets like an infestation, rumbling their carts around the city like roaches, rental fencing unable to contain them. They're the walking wounded, and all the courts do is catch and release, catch and release. Cops take the heat. It's like Gotham or Mad Max in their eyes, and us, the regular tax-paying people, we're the ones who suffer. We're the victims of crime.
Well done, Amy.
All right, thank you. Okay, that was great. And we're one left, and I'm assuming that this first place story was written by Joanne. Pretty smart guy, I can figure things out. So first place goes to The Smell of Danger. The Smell of Danger establishes a mysterious, slightly unsettling mood early and holds on to it throughout. Rich, lively prose and a calm, measured pace set the table for this tale of two habitual strollers taking in their surroundings and leaving so much unsaid. The beauty and violence of the natural world colors everything the narrator touches upon and creates an eerie, threatening aura that plays against the rather humdrum circumstances of the narrative's second half, where our two main characters sit in a cafe and look out at the busy streets, uninvolved. Even the most seemingly innocuous moments are charged with an intense energy. The language is precise and builds towards a unified, disquieting, and exciting narrative that, like the best of stories, leaves a mark on you afterwards. All right, we'll take it away, Joanne.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I'm going to read from the middle of my story. We didn't talk much that night once we passed the lagoon and entered the seemingly infinite realm of ocean and sky. The seawall was quiet, only our footsteps whispering to the murmuring surf. Time wandered by, leaving no trace, the two of us self-contained within the black veil of a moonless canopy. Up ahead, a shadow tore at the evening shroud. Sarah shifted, her hands no longer in her pockets. The man passed. Several minutes later, the darkness once again our sole companion, she said, "He was dangerous. I could smell it." I waited for her to say more. The waves pushed against the rocky beach and receded in an incessant, not quite soothing lullaby. The rock cliffs to my right smelled of moss and slight decay. There was a whiff of guano from the cormorant's nesting grounds up ahead. Is that what she smelled? Anxiety crept up my spine. I wanted to know what she sensed, but I couldn't ask without looking ignorant or more naive than she knew me to be. Sarah must have felt my unease. "It's okay," she said. "He's gone." But it wasn't. What does danger smell like? We strolled through those cold and wet months into the hot, humid summer that followed. Moon shadows languished over conversations of politics and philosophy. We skipped in the rain under aubergine umbrellas, swam naked in pools with jewel-toned starfish, and told each other dreams meant only for our ears. Our minds melded into one as we walked the Stygian path between friendship and intimacy. Walking beside Sarah was like standing on a cliff edge, the whole world below inviting me to walk forward and accept its embrace. By September, I'd made a decision. Outside our local cafe, the setting sun illuminated the mountains to the north. The downtown high-rises glowed golden as seagulls called out above the din of rush hour traffic. The crimson leaf flirted with a warm breeze as it danced slowly down the street. Sarah was looking out the window. I knew it without having to see that her eyes would be intense, peering far beyond the busy intersection, drilling into the twilight of the gathering dusk. "What are you thinking?" I asked. She turned towards me, eyes refocusing on the space between us. It didn't seem like she was going to speak. Dishes clanged in the kitchen, a car horn blared, sirens screamed in the near distance. Finally, "Oh, just how much I like this little corner of the world, watching the people go by, She paused as the server refilled our coffee. I didn't think she was going to finish her thought. She stared into her mug, mechanically stirring in cream. My watch ticked by with investment. Someone laughed. Uninvited doubt crept into my belly. I began wishing for a meal to arrive. Then
Thank you, Joanne. That was awesome.
Great. Thank you. I'm speechless. Now, I believe we will be giving the floor back to Sam, who has a small excerpt of his own prepared from one of his works. Sam?
All right. Yeah. And once again, just great to hear everyone's stories and, see who wrote them. And for the other categories, it was great to hear from you as well, just to hear what the younger folks are up to. I'll have to check out those stories now that I've heard little excerpts. But yeah, everything about this, reading through the stories and as a judge, and then hearing excerpts from it now at this event has been just fantastic. So I'm going to read just a short little piece from my novel that came out last fall, Citizens of Light. Just to tell you about it, it's kind of, it's about a woman who works at a call center, and one night her husband, she wakes up to find he's missing and in fact dead in a bog and under very mysterious circumstances. And she doesn't really have much to go on, but she later finds sort of a lead that clues her in that someone who might know something is in Niagara Falls working at a casino. So she and her coworker at the call center drive to Niagara Falls to sort of figure out what's going on. And I'm just going to read a bit about their drive to Niagara Falls at the beginning of the book. We drove through Oakville and Burlington. Leonard was born in Oakville. The plastics plant he worked at was in Burlington. One time I took the train and met him after a shift. We had dinner at a spaghetti place near the plant. Leonard was convinced that O.J. Simpson was sitting at one of the other tables. It wasn't him. We argued about that while we ate, whispering our points, but it was still a great dinner. Leonard and I always got along, even when we weren't getting along, if that makes sense. We respected each other. I looked out the window for the spaghetti place, but didn't recognize anything. We stopped at a Wendy's in Hamilton so I could pee. Patty told me to be quick, but the toilet seat was disgusting, so I had to layer it with toilet paper, and the automatic flusher kept sucking it all down into the bowl. Back in the parking lot, I saw that Patty was on the phone. Looked like she was crying. Her face was redder than usual. Maybe that was just a light coming through the car window, though. I walked around the building a few times until she honked, then I jumped back in the car. Everything okay? Mind your business. Patty turned the Columbine book up full. The dashboard rattled. The narrator talked about one of the shooters making pipe bombs in his parents' basement. Patty said more things, but I couldn't hear her over the book. She used curse words. We got back on the highway. As we closed in on our destination, I began to sweat. It was all too real. It's easy to imagine going to some strange city, confronting strange men. But when you're actually doing it, everything changes. I didn't care about what had happened to my husband anymore. I honestly didn't. To hell with it all, I thought. I'm not talking to some goon in a casino. Besides, the man from the funeral was probably Leonard's shy old acquaintance. He didn't know anything. The whole trip was a psychotic break. But the car was moving forward with me in it. Wasn't anything I could do. Maybe I could just follow Patty around for the weekend, get through it, snap a few pictures, shop for souvenirs, back to work on Monday, forget everything. We drove through Grimsby. I told Patty that Grimsby sounds like a dwarf name or a gnome. I thought it was a funny joke we could riff on together, but she didn't hear me. We were on disc 2 of the Columbine book. I tried not to listen because it was upsetting, but details kept getting through, heartbreaking backstories of the victims. I imagined that the book's author had made everything up, that they were a bad reporter. I read all the signs. One said, "Bird Kingdom, keep left." Then we drove over this long, gorgeous bridge. It took 5 minutes to get across, or it felt like 5. I couldn't believe it. We passed a wind farm. I saw a senior citizen lifting weights on his lawn. If you step outside of your head and really look around, the world is filled with beautiful things. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And with that, we're on to our closing remarks. Stephen and Joy.
Yes,
And-
thank you. I know Joy wants to make an announcement, but before we do, if all of you would unmute. Thank you very much. A round of applause for all of the authors. Hear, hear. And now a big thank you for all of the judges who participated in the event. I want to make mention again of Margot Fedoric and Tracy Balnick, who did the preliminary adjudication in the adult category. Thank you both, Margot and Tracy. And then to our judges, Julie and Chris and Sam. Thank you. Applause. Well done.